Good morning, everyone. I just want to say I miss you guys very much, and I hope you're staying healthy and keeping those hands washed. So today we're going to start our new story. It's called A Tree is a Plant. We started on the high frequency words the last day we were at school, but we're going to practice those again because I know it's been a while since we went over those last. So for these, some of these are outlaw words. They're not going to follow our basic sound rules. So for this one, usually that EA says E, because when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. But this time, it's going to say the eh sound. My marker's not any good. There we go, that's better. So this is going to say the eh sound. And then the Y at the end of the word is going to say that E sound. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. I'm going to tap, and I'm going to want you to think, and then I'm going to slide my finger and say, just like we do at carpet. So think, word. Good, the word is ready. All right, next one, this OI makes that silly noise. Do you remember what it is? That OI makes the oi sound. So we're going to think, word, and that one was soil. This next one, this OU, isn't going to have a sound by itself. It is going to have that sound, that short U sound. Then we have the Y at the end of the word again, and it's going to say that E sound. So I'm going to slide, and I want you guys to think, and then tell me what it is. So think, word. All right, good. That one's country. And if you need to pause anytime I'm sliding my finger so you have more time to use your sounds, that's perfectly fine. This I is going to say its name this time. So this is going to be the long I sound. Think, word, and that was the word kinds. Now we're going to come down here, and usually that EA does the two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking, but it's not going to say E because it's one of those tricky ones again. This EAR is actually going to make that sound. That sound spelling we worked on a couple weeks ago, it's going to say that sound. So I want you guys to think. Can you see from my hand? Word. And that one was earth. Now we're going to come over here. This A at the beginning is not going to say the A or the A. It's going to say the aw sound. And this O is going to say its name. So this one's another one of those tricky ones. So we have aw, almost, almost. We're going to come down here to the bottom, if you guys can see that. This O isn't going to say its name or its short sound. It's going to say the sound. And then this ER, don't forget, that's that sound spelling that says So I want you guys to think. I'm going to do it from up here just so you guys can see it better. Think, word. Good, that one's covers. And then the last one, this AR, isn't going to say the R sound that we've worked on before, so it's another tricky one. It's going to say more of the OR sound. So I want you guys to think, word, and that one's the word warms, like he warms up his food before he eats it. Now I want you guys to go to page 116 in your hardback reader. We are going to go over some of these words again, and this time it has them in sentences so we can better understand what they're going to be about. So if you need to pause the video to give yourself time to get to the page, that's fine, and then you can unpause it when you're ready. So the first word on this context card is the word ready. It says, we are ready to pick apples. Number 2 says country. We live in the country. And that doesn't, we talked about these a little bit, that doesn't mean country like the United States is a country. That is like the area that you live in. So we all kind of live in the country because we live more isolated. Excuse me. So let's go to card number 3. This one is the word soil. It says, we planted the flowers in the soil. Over here to number 4. The soil is like the dirt. Number 4 says the word kinds. There are many kinds of butterflies here. So kinds are like different types. If we go down here to number 5, this one is the word earth. Now this doesn't mean earth like planet Earth. This one is actually meaning earth like the dirt or the ground. So it says, she covers the seeds with earth. That means she covered them with the dirt. Number 6, this card right here, this is the word almost. The apples are almost ripe. It means they're close to being ready, but they're not there yet. And down here at the bottom, card number 7, it says covers. Pollen covers the bee. And then come over here to card number 8. This one is the word warms. The oven warms our apple pie. So a lot of those words don't follow the sound spelling, so we're really going to have to practice those and work on them because we can't always use our sounds to sound them out. So I'm going to turn the page. This story we're going to talk about sequencing again, and I know we've talked about sequencing a lot, especially when we worked with Frog and Toad and with the planting of the seeds. And this is going to be a little bit like that. So we're still going to use the sequencing, so I need you guys to keep in mind what were our sequencing words we used. Do you remember? We had first, next, then, and last. So those are going to be key words when we sequence events or when we put events in order. So over here it says preview the topic. And this is going to go back to a lot of what we talked about when we did our bean plants and when we talked about Frog and Toad. It says preview the topic, life cycle. A seed is planted. A small plant sprouts up. It grows bigger, then beans grow on the plant. Inside the beans are more seeds which can be planted. This is the life cycle of a bean plant. An egg hatches into a tiny caterpillar. The caterpillar grows and makes a cocoon. Inside its cocoon, it changes. Then out comes a butterfly. This is the life cycle of a butterfly. Every living thing has a life cycle. You will read about the life cycle of an apple tree in A Tree is a Plant. So when it talks about life cycles, that means that every living thing goes through stages or goes through an order for how it lives. So it's going to grow and it's going to change in a certain order and it's going to look certain ways throughout each period of the life cycle or each part of its change. So go ahead and turn the page. We'll be on this page. Over here it still talks about our sequence of events, so that means telling the order that the story happens. And then it says genre. We've talked about that a lot, actually, and this is just like the type of story that we're using. So over here it says informational text. That's a story that we're going to learn something from. An informational text gives facts, and as you read, look for information and facts in the words. Facts means things that are true. And then it says to also look for pictures that show details about the real world. Meet the author, Clyde Robert Bulla. Clyde Robert Bulla lived on a farm and went to a one-room school. He loved to read and write, but he also had to do chores. When he was 10 years old, Clyde entered an essay contest and won a prize. When he grew up, he wrote many books for children. Do you guys remember what the author does? The author is the one that writes the story. Then down here it says, meet the illustrator. Do you remember what the illustrator does? The one that draws the pictures, right. Meet the illustrator, Stacy Schuett. As a child, Stacy Schuett loved to ride her horse, Snorky, and be able to observe nature. She puts a lot of what she remembers in her drawings and paintings. So let's look at this title page. First, let's think about what this picture looks like. Is it a photograph? Is it a drawing? Is it a painting? I think it might be a painting. So our essential question says, what happens to a tree as it grows? What does happen to it? It changes and it gets bigger, doesn't it? If you want to pause after I read each sentence or after I read each page and then you can echo read me, that's fine. Or if you want me to read the whole story and then you can turn the video off and then you read the whole story, that's fine too. A tree is a plant. A tree is the biggest plant that grows. Most kinds of trees grow from seeds. There's our word kinds. Most kinds of trees grow from seeds the way most small plants do. There are many kinds of trees. Here are a few of them. How many do you know? So this shows us different kinds of trees. We have maple. We have conifer. We have persimmon. We have palm trees. We have lemon trees. And we have willow trees. Have you guys seen any of these at your house or around your house? So go ahead and turn the page. This tree grows in the country. It might grow in your yard too. Do you know what kind it is? This is an apple tree. How many of you have an apple tree in your yard? I have one in my yard too. So let's slide over to the next page. This apple tree came from a seed. The seed was small. It grew inside an apple. Have you ever seen an apple seed? Ask an adult to help you cut an apple in two. The seeds are in the center, and they look like this. Turn the page. Most apple trees come from seeds that are planted. Sometimes an apple tree grows from a seed that falls to the ground. The wind blows the leaves over the seed. The wind blows soil over the seed. There's that word, soil. So sometimes we don't plant the seeds. Sometimes the seeds just end up in the ground and then they start to grow. So slide over to the next page. We're up here at the top. All winter the seed lies under the leaves in the soil. All winter the seed lies under the ice and snow and is pushed into the ground. Spring comes, rain falls, the sun comes out and warms the earth. The seed begins to grow. There's our words, warms and earth. So go ahead and we're going to turn the page. Here's where it's going to talk a little bit more about the way the plant looks at different stages as it grows. At first, the young plant does not look like a tree. The tree is very small. It only has a stem with 2 leaves. It has no apples on it. A tree must grow up before it has apples on it. Each year the tree grows, it grows tall. In 7 years, it is so tall that you can stand under its branches. In the spring, there are blossoms on the tree. Spring is apple blossom time. Down here it says, analyze the text, sequence of events. After many years, what happens to the little plant? So we started with the seed, and then slowly it started to sprout and got to this point, and then after years it did what? Yeah, it grew a lot taller. It grew so tall after 7 years that you could stand under its branches. So it got a lot bigger like this. Then let's look at this picture. This shows the apple blossoms. So in spring, which is what we're starting into right now for our seasons, it sprouts all these pretty apple blossoms. So if you have apple trees in your yard, make sure you look and see if you can find the trees that look like this. So go ahead and turn the page. We're going to be right here. The blossoms last only a few days. Then they fall to the ground. Now there are green leaves on the tree. And guess what else the apple blossoms attract? Bees. So be careful if you're around your apple tree in case there's bees out. We're going to slide over to the next page. Among the leaves there are small apples. The apples are where the blossoms were before. So these blossoms fall off and they turn into the apples. Or the apples take their place, I should say. The apples are green and they are almost too small for you to see. There's that word, almost. The apples grow slowly. They grow all during the spring and the summer. Turn the page. Here's another one of our seasons. In the fall, they are large and ripe. They are ready to eat. We can see the apples in the leaves on the branches. We can see the branches growing out of the trunk. We can see the trunk growing out of the ground. So let's slide over. Do you see what he's doing? What's he picking? He's picking the apples. In the fall is when the apples turn red and they're getting ready. They're almost ready to eat. They're ripe. So let's come down here to this page. We can see the bark of the tree. You guys remember what bark is. The bark covers the branches and the trunk like a coat, but there is a part of the tree that we cannot see. Down here it asks about figurative language, and we talked about that a little bit in Whistle for Willie too. It says, why do you think the author says the bark is like a coat? Do you guys remember why an author might use figurative language? Sometimes they'll use figurative language or just a different way of saying something because it makes the story more interesting. He could have said it covers the tree. Or if he says it covers the tree like a coat, it really makes you see and understand that that bark is wrapped all the way around the tree, kind of like you would wrap up in a coat. So we're going to go ahead and turn the page. We cannot see the roots. They are under the ground. Some of the roots are large. Some of them are as small as hairs. The roots grow like branches under the ground. A tree could not live without roots. We talked about roots a lot when we did our bean plants and when we talked about all the plants with Frog and Toad. We talked about what the roots did, but this story is going to tell us again. Roots hold the trunk in the ground. Roots keep the tree from falling when the wind blows. Roots keep the rain from washing the tree out of the ground. So the roots hold the tree in the ground. They also can keep the tree from falling when the wind blows because it keeps it steady and keeps it rooted in the ground. And those roots pull in the water and help the tree survive. Oops, I just gave away the next page. So go ahead and turn the page and it's going to tell us what else the roots do. Roots do something more. They take water from the ground. They carry the water into the trunk of the tree. The trunk carries the water to the branches. The branches carry the water to the leaves. So if we look at our picture, it shows these are the roots. And if you look at these arrows, it's showing that the water is being pulled in by the roots. The roots are sending it up the trunk, and from the trunk it goes out into the branches and into the leaves. So the roots pull in the water and help send it to the rest of the parts of the tree. Slide over to the next page. Hundreds and hundreds of leaves grow on the branches. The leaves make food from water and air. They make food when the sun shines. The food goes into the branches. It goes into the trunk and roots. It goes to every part of the tree. So let's look at this picture. This is just like with the plants, how we talked about the leaves catch the sun and pull it in to help make food. If we look at the arrows, the energy from the sun is going toward the tree, and the tree is pulling it in from the leaves and then sending it down the branches and down the trunk. So the whole tree is getting nutrients or getting the things that it needs to live. Go ahead and turn the page. Fall comes. Oops, let me start over. Fall comes and winter is near. The work of the leaves is over. The leaves turn yellow and brown. The leaves die and fall to the ground. So what's happening to the leaves right here? Yeah, they're changing colors. That means it's fall and they're starting to change colors and they're going to all fall off the tree. And you can see where some of these apples have fallen off the tree too. So let's slide over. We're going to talk about another season. Now the tree is bare. That means it doesn't have anything on it. All the winter it looks dead. Oops, I read that wrong. I added an extra word. Let's read that line over. All winter it looks dead. But the tree is not dead. Under its coat of bark, the tree is alive. So even though the leaves have fallen off, that doesn't mean the tree's died. So let's go ahead and turn this page. These are such nice paintings that the illustrator did in this book. I really like these. So let's turn over. Now look. Spring comes again, rain falls. Let's look at this picture for a minute. What are these little green dots that we see all over this tree? Do you see them? Those are buds or new sprouts to where the flowers are going to come back out and where the leaves are going to come back out. They're going to grow again. This is such a pretty picture. The sun warms the earth. There's our word warms again. The tree blossoms and new leaves grow. As long as it lives, the apple tree grows. As long as it lives, the apple tree blossoms in the spring and apples grow on it. So every year in the spring, it's going to get the apple blossoms on it, and then every fall, it's going to keep getting apples as long as it's alive. We talked about this a little bit before with the other story. What do you think lives longer? Do plants live longer or do trees? Yeah, the trees. And then what about how big they get? Do the plants get bigger or do the trees get bigger? Well, let's look right here. Look at these flowers. See how big they are, and then look how big this tree is. So the trees live a lot longer and they grow a lot bigger, but they also take a lot more time to grow. So I want everybody to turn the page. When do you like apple trees best? In spring when they are covered with blossoms? In summer when they are covered with leaves? So it's asking us which one we like best. Either in the spring with all the apple blossoms, in the summer when it's got all the leaves, or, turn the page, in the winter when they are bare. So do we like them in the winter when there's not any leaves on them? Or in the fall when they are covered with apples. So which one's your favorite? Which one do you like best? So let's sequence some of these events really quickly and then we'll be done. First, what did we have to do to get the apple tree to grow? Do you remember? We had to plant the seed. And then do you remember what all plants need to survive? We talked about this with Frog and Toad a lot too. They need water, they need sunlight, they need air, and they need space to grow big. And so that their roots have enough space that they can expand and get more water. So we have to plant the seed, and it's got to get all the things that it needs to help it grow. So after we plant the seed, it's going to sprout, then it's going to get taller, and when it turns into a tree, which would take a little while because it starts out as a small plant and it takes a lot of time. Remember, life cycles take time, and we have to be patient while they grow. After it turns into a tree, in the spring first, it's going to get the apple blossoms, and then in the summer, it's going to just get its leaves, and then in the fall is when it'll do the apples. And then in winter, when all the leaves and the apples have fallen off, it's going to be bare, and it's still growing during all of this time. Excuse me. And still growing. When it gets back into the spring, those apple blossoms are going to start again. So when we have that sequence or that cycle, it's going to go through certain stages at each time, and they're going to look kind of the same every time. Like the apple blossoms are always going to look like apple blossoms, and the apples in the fall will always look like the apples that they looked like before. So those sequences are going to follow a certain pattern or a certain cycle when they go through it. What I want you guys to do now is to practice writing your high frequency words. You can either copy them from my board and you can pause the video, or if you go to page 116, I believe, you can practice writing them from the book. You don't have to write the sentences, but I do want you guys to get more familiar with writing and with spelling these words. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you're staying healthy, and I hope I can see you guys again. I miss you guys.